All right, so today is October 10th. It's 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and this is our weekly meeting for Aesop's Fables. Today we're going to study hopefully two fables. The first one is lesson number 100 in the Aesop's Fables course. It's the fable of the boar and the ass. And then the second one will be the envious man and the covetous man. So hopefully we'll get to both of them. These are some good fables, actually. Some interesting discussions can come from them, and they apply to current events in a pretty important way. So hopefully I'll try not to babble about them too much today, but there are some really good things to talk about and think about as we look at them. Before I get started, though, I want to make one announcement. I want you all to know that when we finish these classes, sometimes you might just not be able to come to a class, you'll miss a class. They're all recorded, like but you need to know where the recordings are because I'm not putting links to the recordings on the webpage. I'm going to type a link right here in the chat. So give me 1 second. Vimeo.com. Don't click on this link right now. I just want you to see it and remember it. So I post, or actually I don't post them. It's automatically posted. Once we finish class in about an hour, the video is automatically posted on that website. So I don't even have to do anything. And what's good about that website is that there's no ads or anything. So there's no distracting nonsense. If you want to watch that video, you can go to that link and you'll see all the videos. There's a folder that says Zoom recordings, but all of my videos are there with no ads. So don't go on YouTube because there's all kinds of junk on YouTube. I post them on YouTube just, so people can learn about the program. But for you students, I'd like you to watch the videos on Vimeo because there's no ads, no distractions. It's much nicer. Okay. So vimeo.com/classical liberal arts is where all of my videos will be. All of these class videos are there and you can watch them anytime. Okay. So that's how you should watch them. So that's the announcement that I wanted to make. I think that's all I needed to share today. So I think we're ready to go. Any questions before I get going here? Any last second questions? Or are we ready to go? Because I'm ready to go. I'm going to share my screen in a second once I find the fable. These are some good fables today. So let's dig into this. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Don't forget that when I share my screen, I can't see the chat too well. So just wait until I take a break and I'll ask you about any questions. All right, so let's get started here. Okay, you should see my screen on your screen now. And you see this image, just in case you don't know what a boar and an ass are. A boar is a wild pig. And that might not sound very scary because we tend to think of farm animals as pigs, but usually farm animals, farm pigs they're usually not like wild boars. They're usually younger than what, first of all, they're usually younger because when farmers raise pigs for the market or for the butcher, they usually have them killed when they're young. When pigs get older, especially male pigs, when they get older, especially if they're wild, they get very violent and nasty, and they grow these big, huge tusks that grow out of their mouth that make them pretty dangerous. They're actually one of the most dangerous animals in the wild. So a boar is a wild male pig that usually is more than 1 year old. So they're full size and they're nasty and they're pretty dangerous. Okay, so don't think of a cute little pink farm pig. If you've never been around pigs, when they get older, they get nastier. That's usually why they get butchered when they're younger. So it's about the boar and an ass. And an ass is a donkey. Again, if you don't know much about farm animals, a donkey is an animal that's really good for nothing except carrying stuff. It doesn't, it's not used to like pull a plow or anything like that. They're not very nice animals. They're kind of annoying. But they're useful in that they can carry a lot of weight. So usually they're used for what are called pack animals. They'll just be loaded up with luggage or something like that and used to carry things. But they're not very valuable animals other than working as pack animals. So we've got this fable about these two animals, the boar and the ass. And you've got a good little picture of them there. The wild boar, you can see he's pretty ugly. And you can see the big tusks coming out of his mouth. Those are actually bottom teeth that grow up out of his mouth when he uses them like hooks when he fights. And then you've got this scraggly looking donkey over here. All right. The fable of the boar and the ass. So pay attention and I'll read it. There's a lot of vocabulary in this fable. I'll go through it after we read it, but pay attention to the words because there's a bunch of words in here that you probably don't know. And we'll talk about them once I get done reading. The fable of the boar and the ass. A little scamp of an ass meeting in a forest with a boar came up to him and hailed him with impudent familiarity. The boar was about to resent the insult by ripping up the ass's flank, but wisely stifling his passion, he contented himself with saying, "Go, you sorry beast. I could easily and amply be revenged upon you, but I do not care to foul my tusks with the blood of so base a creature." Now, that's a difficult fable to read because, like I said, there's a lot of vocabulary in this fable that you probably don't know when you first read it. So let's just look at the words. We'll make sure that all the words are clear, and then I'll read it one more time so you can understand what it says, okay? First, in the first sentence, a little scamp of an ass. The word scamp. Does anybody have any idea what scamp means? Don't post "I don't know." That's not helpful. Does anybody have any idea what the word scamp means? I'll just give you a second here. Naughty, mischievous, small, little. Well, one thing you guys did well, you can stop there. One thing you did well was you all identified something that's not necessarily good, right? And that's the first thing you should always do. When you look at vocabulary when you're reading, the first question you should ask yourself is simply, is it a good thing or a bad thing, right? A little scamp of an ass. It doesn't sound like it's something good, right? Sounds like it's something bad. Scamp, the word scamps means worthless. That's what it means, worthless. So, we have the phrase good for nothing. That's what scamp means. A little scamp of an ass, a little good for nothing donkey, okay? It says it's little, probably not well fed, probably ugly, not doing anything. It's in the woods where donkeys don't belong in the woods, right? So just this little worthless ass meets in the forest with a boar. And like I said, a boar is one of the most dangerous wild animals in the forest. So this little worthless donkey meets in the forest with a boar. And he comes up to the boar, this powerful, nasty, violent animal, comes up to him and hails him, says hello to him, greets him with impudent familiarity. Impudent means like disrespectful or arrogant, okay? Disrespectful or arrogant. Impudent is the idea of someone who doesn't respect someone who deserves respect. So for example, if your father walked into the room and you greeted your father by his first name, like you said, "Hey, Tom, what's up?" That would be impudent, disrespectful, okay? Or if you refer to an adult by their first name rather than calling them Mr. or Mrs. or using a title that's respectful. That's what it means to be impudent, to not show respect, all right? So the donkey speaks to the boar disrespectfully, right? He doesn't respect the power. He doesn't respect the danger of the boar, just sort of talks to him like they're equals. That's what familiarity means, just means talks with no respect, just acts as if they're equals, okay? So the donkey is this little worthless thing, and he speaks to this boar without respecting the power of the boar. The boar was insulted. To be insulted means to be provoked to anger by the way someone else behaves, to be insulted, all right? The boar was about to resent the insult. Resent means here, it means to repay. So the boar was thinking to himself, "Oh, so you think you're just going to walk up to me and act as if, we're equals? Like I can't tear you apart, you impudent little scamp of an ass," right? That's the idea here. So the boar was angry because he was insulted by the way the donkey treated him. And he thought to tear him up, right? To kill him and teach him a lesson. But notice what it says, wisely stifling his passion. So the boar thinks his initial reaction or his instinct is to get angry and just tear this donkey apart. But he wisely stifles his passion and contented himself, saying, "Go, you sorry beast. I could easily and amply be revenged upon you, but I do not care to foul my tusks with the blood of so base a creature." What do you think it means to foul your tusks? What does that mean? Foul my tusks. What does foul mean here? What do you think? Make them dirty. Yeah, mess them up. Good. Okay. So he says, "I do not care to foul my tusks, my sharp, pointy tusks, with the blood of so base a creature." What do you think base means? What do you think base means? So base a creature. Bad, bottom, foolish, common, low. Very good. Those are all good answers. Okay. "I do not care to foul my tusks with the blood of so base a creature." Okay, good. Worthless, right. Yeah, so base, you can see how base shows us the meaning of this word scamp, right? And you need to know that whenever you're reading, there's always clues in the reading as to what unfamiliar words mean, okay? So there we have the idea of this fable. Now, I noticed one of you wrote, I'm going to get to the moral in a minute. I noticed one of you wrote, the boar is stuck up. The boar is stuck up. Now here's an interesting thing to talk about, okay? When we read a story like this, we might think, oh, the donkey is just a nice fella, walking through the woods, comes across a boar and says, "Oh, hi there, Mr. Killer Animal." And we might think that the donkey is just friendly, but the donkey, that's not friendly, because it's not prudent, it's not respectful, not wise. That's not what it means to be friendly. Plus, we're responsible to recognize differences between people. And so when we talk to people, being friendly isn't necessarily good if you're talking to someone who's a superior, for example. Like if you met the bishop, and when you met the bishop, you just started rattling off about all your ordinary everyday stuff, you might think that that's friendly, but it's disrespectful, because you're not recognizing that there's a difference in society between a bishop and you. And it's part of your responsibility to show that respect, okay? So just because someone is friendly doesn't mean that they're behaving properly, because we need to be respectful and recognize our place in society. Like I said before, you shouldn't call your parents by their first names. You shouldn't call adults by their first names. You should respect adults, respect authority, respect people who hold different positions, and so on. So you may think that this ass is being friendly and is like the good guy, but he's not, because he's not respecting the place that the boar has as one of the most powerful animals in the forest. So he's being foolish, and that's why he's called impudent in the fable. Aesop tells us he's not good. Aesop tells us he's impudent. He's arrogant and foolish, okay? So he's impudent. The donkey is not the good guy here. The boar was insulted by the way the donkey acts, because the boar is actually superior to the donkey and deserves respect from the donkey and doesn't get it. So the boar is insulted and he's provoked to anger. And you see this word passion in the fable. And I want to talk about passion for a minute. When God created us, he created us with passions. And you can think about some passions. Passions are ways that your soul reacts naturally to different things. You have a natural reaction to a certain thing. One of those passions is sorrow, right? One of the passions is sorrow. One of the passions might be considered laughter. One of the passions is anger. These are different natural reactions or feelings that we have in our soul. And when we see different things or when different things happen, we naturally react to those things with these passions. But we're not supposed to allow the passions to just do whatever they want, because we're also given the power of reason. And reason is supposed to control the passions because the passions are not reasonable. Reason is supposed to control the passion. So for example, you might be, let's say you're at the store, you're at the mall or something like that, and you see let's say an old person walking, and he slips and falls down. Now, it might look really silly, and you might feel the passion to laugh because it looked silly, right? But it's disrespectful to laugh, and reason would tell you not to laugh, but to try to help the person. So the natural passion will always be there, but it's not necessarily good, and we're supposed to control our passions with reason. Another passion is anger, and I'm sure you all know what it feels like for someone else to do something that makes you angry. You know, you hear sayings like, "You make my blood boil," right? Like that feeling of anger. Well, that's natural, and it's actually good by itself. Anger is good by itself, but we have to control it. Okay, we have to control anger because anger is not reasonable. Just because we feel angry doesn't mean that we should let that anger, tear out and do whatever it wants. So we're supposed to control our anger. So in this fable, what we see is the donkey being foolish and insulting the boar, provoking him to anger, provoking this powerful, deadly animal to anger. And we see the boar in this fable actually control his anger. Okay, we see the boar control his anger. And notice that Aesop tells us he acts wisely. The boar is the good guy in this story. The boar wisely stifling his passion, the passion of anger, wisely stifling it or controlling it. Wisely controlling his anger, contents himself with saying, "Go away, you sorry beast," to this donkey. Okay? So that's really our fable. Our fable is the boar is the good guy in the fable. The donkey is the bad guy. The donkey acts impudently or disrespectfully, doesn't respect that the boar is a superior animal that could tear him to pieces, but treats him disrespectfully. And then the boar, being the good guy, is filled with anger, which is natural and good. And he wisely controls that anger and makes a good decision. Okay? Now, you might wonder, why do I say anger is good? Because anger, you see what anger does? Anger is like a fire inside of us that can cause us to do good things if it's controlled. For example, let's say you have a sin that you have a hard time dealing with, and you always give in to this one temptation, you always do this one bad thing, and you do it and you do it and you do it. Let's say you get in trouble from your parents for doing it, and what happens over time is anger you'll start to get angry at yourself, and finally you'll get to a point where you get so angry with yourself that you're finally able to make a change. And anger can actually help you to break free from bad habits. Like, let's say you're always distracted by a phone, and there's always people texting on the phone, and there's all this stuff and videos and all this junk on the phone, and it's always distracting you and wasting your time. And finally you get so angry that you just smash that phone into pieces, and that's it. You get rid of that distraction. Sometimes we need to do that, and anger can help us to break out of bad habits. That's what anger is for. But at the same time, we'll also be tempted by anger to not break a smartphone into pieces, but to break a person into pieces, right? And that's a different story. So we've got to be careful. So here we see the boar controlling himself and not allowing himself to just allow his anger to go crazy, but he controls his anger and makes a wise decision and just says, get out of here, you sorry beast. Now, the moral of the fable is obviously that we need to control our anger. The moral of the fable is that we need to control our anger. And it's difficult to control our anger because pride will tempt us to not want to control our anger. Pride will tempt this boar to teach that ass a lesson and tear him up, right? But that's not necessarily the best thing. So you can see how all these different passions and sins work together and put us in danger. And you've got to be willing, like the boar here, to just let an annoying person, let an insulting person, let an impudent person just go away, right? And it's very hard to do that. If someone's making fun of you or something like that, you'll be tempted to fight with them. And what does the boar says? He says, I don't want to get myself in trouble because of you. I don't want to get my tusks all fouled up because of you, because you're annoying and disrespectful. I don't want to get myself trouble because you're annoying. And you see how that self-control works. So the boar does what's best for himself and doesn't allow the donkey to cause him to get into trouble, which he has to then pay for by, let's say, just making a mess of himself. So you can see how the boar thinks, and it's teaching us that we have to think like the boar when someone provokes us to anger. It's not worth showing them a lesson, right? It's not worth reacting to them or letting them control our behavior by being insulting. We have to learn to control, to stifle our anger, which is wisdom. And it's very difficult to do that. So that's the fable of the boar and the ass, okay? So anytime someone is annoying you, anytime you're provoked to anger, and you just want to tear somebody's hair out, you need to remind yourself of the fable of the boar and the ass and be like the boar, okay? That's our first fable here. And obviously how that applies to your life is, we all have to face this, right? We all have to face different things that provoke us to anger. But what you've got to think about, like the boar, you've got to think about the bad consequences that you'll have if you respond with anger. If you respond with anger, you will have to pay consequences. And that's why you should choose to not let someone else or something else cause you to react with anger, because you'll pay for it. For example, if someone's annoying to you and you choose to get into a fight, you're breaking the law by fighting. So now you're in trouble, and that person actually causes you to pay a penalty, which you should not allow. All right, so that's our first fable, the boar and the ass. Real quick, any questions about that fable? Any questions about that fable, the boar and the ass? It's a very helpful fable to think about. Don't let the donkeys of this world get you into trouble. Why was the boar chosen? Because, like I said, Jude, we may not think much about this, but in the wilderness, boars, which are wild male pigs, are actually some of the most violent and dangerous animals. You'll actually, if you read ancient history, you'll see that ancient warriors used to brag about killing boars. They would go on boar hunts, and it was a challenge for, great warriors to be able to kill a boar with a spear. So they were very, very dangerous, very tough, very nasty animals. Don't think about, little cute pink farm pigs. They're usually young. These are big, old, hairy, nasty, wild pigs. A pig could tear a donkey to pieces in a second. Okay. There are weapons made for killing boars. Yeah, they're guns, right? But they're still very nasty. And one of the problems with boars is sometimes people are out in forests and things like that, and boars are hiding in the brush, and they just sort of pop out and catch people off guard. Okay. A donkey was used with Mary and Joseph. Yeah, what's significant about the donkey being used is it's a sign of their humility, right? It's, kings didn't ride around on donkeys. Okay, so it's a sign of their poverty. Remember, they rode a donkey out to Bethlehem, and they had no place to stay. They ended up staying in some kind of a barn. So the donkey is a symbol of that humility and poverty and simplicity. Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey. That was important, right? That was important. He didn't come in on some big fancy carriage pulled with beautiful horses. He came in sitting on a donkey because donkeys are the animals that are kept usually by poorer people. All right. Okay, so that's all for that fable of the boar and the ass. Let's get on to the next fable. The second fable here, number 101, is the fable of the envious man and the covetous man. All right, so let's focus on this one. The envious man and the covetous man. Before we get started, what does it mean to be envious? Does anybody know what it means to be envious? What does it mean to be envious? Sometimes we use these words in a sloppy way. Jealous, angry. What does it mean to be envious? To want what others have? Yeah, you're kind of getting there. Those are good answers. To be envious, I think jealous is probably the best word. Just check your spelling there on jealous. Jealous is probably the good. To be envious means that you get angry or unhappy when other people have success. Okay, that's what it means to be envious. So, you hear that some other kid got a new bike for Christmas, and you get angry because he has this new gift, or someone wins an award and you get angry because they won that award, and you're just angry and disappointed when other people have success. You don't celebrate other people's success, okay? That's what it means to be envy. How about covetous? What does it mean to be covetous? You can see these words are similar, but they're not the same. What does it mean to be covetous? What does it mean to be covetous? Give me some ideas. What does it mean to be covetous? To be greedy, I see. Greedy, to always want more, to be lazy. And I see some question marks here, so you're not really sure. I think the best word to use for covetous is probably greedy. Okay, covetous is when someone desires more than he needs, more than he should desire. Okay. Sometimes to want what others have when there's a limited amount of stuff and you want more, but the only way to get more is to get what other people have. That's related to covetous. But really what covetousness is the desire for more and more and more. Right? So we've got this fable here of the envious man who is frustrated by other people's success, and the covetous man, which is a man who always wants more than he has. Even if he's successful, even if he has plenty, he still wants more. Okay, the envious man and the covetous man. So let's read this fable together here. Two men, one a covetous fellow, and the other thoroughly possessed by the passion. Notice again this word passion. Thoroughly possessed by the passion of envy, came together to proffer their petitions to Jupiter. Proffer just means to offer, okay? It means to offer forth or to present. They came together, a covetous man and an envious man came together to offer their petitions, to offer their prayers to Jupiter, who is the Roman idea of the god of all gods, okay? Jupiter sent Apollo, who is, considered like the god of wisdom. Jupiter sent Apollo to deal with their requests. So they made some request to Jupiter. We don't know what those requests were. They made requests. They asked Jupiter for something, and Jupiter sent Apollo to deal with what they asked, to deal with them. All right. Apollo came up with this solution and responded to them. He says that whatsoever should be granted to the first, the other should receive double. So Apollo makes a deal with these two men. And you got to make sure you follow me here, because it's a little tricky to keep all this in mind. Apollo told them, these two men, whatever is given to the first one who asks, the second one will receive double. Okay? That's what he says to them. So the envious man and the covetous man need to figure out who wants to go first, because whoever asks first is going to get what he asks for, but the second one is going to get double. So who should go first? Well, the covetous man, remember, the covetous man always wants more. So he thinks, wait a minute, if the second person is going to get twice as much, then I want to go second. So the covetous man forbore to speak. That means he chose not to speak. He let the envious man go first. So the covetous man waited in order that he might receive twice as much as his companion. The envious man was left to go first, and he thought about the fact that the covetous man would get double whatever he asked for. And remember, the envious man doesn't like to see other people get good things. So the envious man thinks about what he should ask for. In the spitefulness of his heart, spitefulness means to do something hurtful just for the sake of doing it. There's no real need to do it. You do it just because you're nasty, just because you're rotten. In the spitefulness of his heart, the envious man prayed that one of his eyes might be pulled out, knowing that the other would have to lose both of his eyes. Okay? So that's what the envious man decides to pray for. He thinks about the covetous man having double of what he gets, and he says, all right, I'll teach him a lesson. I want him to suffer, so I'm willing to suffer to cause him to suffer doubly. So I'll ask that one of my eyes be pulled out so that I get to watch both of his eyes get pulled out. That's the envious man's request. And that's the fable of the envious man and the covetous man. Okay? So yeah, it's pretty gross. Now, let's think about this fable, because we've got to figure out what the moral of the fable is. Okay? And notice, remember, I always tell you, pay attention to all the details that Aesop gives us, because Aesop is a wise man. He doesn't write anything that's not necessary. So when he gives us details, a lot of times the moral of the fable depends on the details. Okay? He told us that we have a covetous man and an envious man, that they came to Jupiter to ask for something, and that Jupiter sent them to Apollo for Apollo to deal with it. And Apollo came up with a solution. What both of them were asking Jupiter for were bad. They were both bad, and so Jupiter handed them over to Apollo to basically figure out a way to judge and punish them. And this is what Apollo came up with. He knew what the outcome would be, and that's why he proposed it to them. So the covetous man, he knew he would want more, so he would choose to go second. The envious man, being upset thinking about the success of the other man, would make a decision to punish him. And so they were set up by Apollo to both be punished by their own words, by their own requests, and that's the outcome of their prayers. Notice we're told that the envious man was spiteful. That's important, okay? Envy is spiteful, because envy doesn't help you. Just because you're envious, you don't get anything out of it. You're eager for other people to be unsuccessful just because you're rotten. That's what envious means. Okay, you just hate seeing other people happy, other people successful. Now, if we talk about the moral of this fable, what I'm going to suggest is that we think about the gods as the eyes through which we want to look at this. And what we see is that Apollo teaches us how to handle bad people. He teaches us a good lesson on government. He teaches us how to govern bad people. Notice Jupiter didn't punish them. Apollo didn't punish them. What Apollo did was set up a system or set up a situation where the bad people would punish themselves. And so it teaches us a good lesson about government. It's a good lesson about how to govern people. Let's imagine well, I mean, you can think about it being a parent one day, and you've got to govern your children, right? That's the first kind of government that exists in the world, is the government of a family. And parents have to think about how to wisely manage their children. Well, if the children are bad, managing the family can be very difficult. And this teaches us one way to manage them wisely is to actually cause their bad behavior to punish themselves. And so they sort of take care of their own bad behavior by their own self-punishment. Okay? So that's a wise way of managing bad people, is to set up the rules so that people who act bad actually punish themselves. Okay, that's really how God's judgment works too. God just gives men what they want, and their bad desires cause them to suffer. So it teaches us about government. Now, if you think about worldly government, like actual government of countries and things like that, it's the same thing. Think about let's say you're a king and you've got this kingdom full of people doing all kinds of stuff. And let's say you've got bad people in your kingdom. Well, you can set yourself up as the king to try to catch them all when they do bad things and then punish them all. But that's really difficult, and it doesn't allow the king to do good things. This is one of the problems with parenting too. If you spend all of your time as a parent trying to catch your kids being bad so you can punish them, you don't do any good things, right? So it's not desirable to do that. Same thing is true in teaching. If you're teaching students, you can spend the whole class fussing about the bad kids and arguing with the bad kids and trying to punish everybody, but you're not actually teaching any lesson. You're just spending all of this time on the bad kids. So those who lead other people don't want to do that. They want to focus on the good things. So you've got to figure out ways where the bad people punish themselves and they don't distract and they don't take up the attention of good people. Now, in America, it's very interesting. I know some of you are not from America, but you have similar things in your countries, which I'll talk about in a minute. But in America, when the founding fathers of America back in the 1700s wanted to figure out how to govern our country, they knew that people would be bad. They knew that people would be bad, and they had to figure out a way for there to be a happy society, even though there were bad people in the society, even though there would be corrupt people and people who tried to do bad things. They had to figure out how to create a government. So what they decided to do was let the people be free, let the people control their own government, give people the power to vote, but set up different parts of the government that would be against each other. So there would be, for example, I don't know how much you know about American government, but we have a president, right? That's one part of the government. Then we've got the Supreme Court. That's another part of the government, and they're separate. Then we've got Congress, which actually has two different parts. We've got a Senate and a House of Representatives. So there's these four different parts of the government, and they're all different, and they all disagree on different things, and they fight against each other. The Senate doesn't like what the House wants to do. The president might not like what the Senate wants to do. The court might not like what the Congress wants to do. And they're all allowed to fight against each other. And what they do is they balance each other out. They fight against each other and they balance each other out. And this is called, I'm going to type this in the chat here. This is called a system of checks and balances. So what the founding fathers did was they designed a government where the bad people in our society would actually fight against each other and cancel each other out. And the good people would be left alone to enjoy a happy life with freedom. So that's what the American government was designed to do. So when you turn on the news or look at news headlines and things, and you see politicians and people always fighting back and forth, and it looks like the president's fighting with the Congress, and the Supreme Court is disagreeing with the Congress, and the Congress is opposing the president, and people act like, oh my goodness, this is so terrible. All of this fighting, the government is so corrupt and terrible. It's actually not true. That's how the government was designed to work. And the overall effect of the government is that the people, the good people, are really left alone in most cases. And these different sides, you hear right against the left, and the liberals against the conservatives. You'll hear all about this Republicans against the Democrats, and they're fighting and fighting and fighting. But what they do at election time, when everybody votes, what happens at election time? All the people on one side, all the people on the other side, they're all fighting, calling each other names and things, being nasty. And then there's an election. And what happens in the election? Who can tell me what happens when all these people vote? What happens? What happens when all these people vote? Give me some ideas. What happens? They stop fighting? Nope, that's not true. They cancel out. That's good. They cancel each other out. So if you take a crazy person on one side and he goes and votes, and a crazy person on the other side and he goes and votes, it's one vote for each side, and the overall effect is zero. They just cancel each other out. So you can see how our government was designed to allow sort of the crazy people on opposite sides to just cancel each other out. And our government stays pretty stable because all of the craziness on both sides just puts the other side out, like putting a fire out, and it stays pretty calm. That's how our government was designed to work. So you can see there was some wisdom, like this fable teaches us, like Apollo shows us here, some wisdom in setting up a system that allows the wildest, nastiest people, the bad people, to cancel each other out. And it actually leaves the common good, which is the goal of government, is to protect the common good. It actually keeps that safe from those people. And there's not much change. When you see people complain about the government, you say, oh, it takes so long for the government to do anything. You can never get any change because it has to go through Congress, and then it has to get approved by the president. And then it was designed to be like that. That's the wisdom of it. It's impossible to make it move quickly. And so the common good is protected. Okay. So I think a moral lesson from this fable, I think one of you, the Owens, because you live in England, you've got a little different system with a king and parliament. But even in parliament, you've got two parts of parliament, just like we have two parts of Congress, and they're similar, if you know about them. What are the two parts of parliament? What are the two parts of parliament? Two different houses, right? What are the two different houses in parliament? Lords and Commons, very good. And those are very similar to our Senate and House of Representatives, right? Back in the old day, maybe not now, the Lords represented like the wealthier nobles, and the Commons represented the population, the common people. That's like the Senate and the House of Representatives in America. Yeah, I know, not really now, but that's how it originally was set up. In America, the Senate usually represents more like the upper class, and the House of Representatives represents the people. So it was designed to be like that. And so you can see these two different groups were set up because they're always going to disagree, and they fight against each other. And the effect that they have on the government is that they cancel each other out, and the government doesn't change very much. Okay, good. We have to get there, Jude. We're getting there. So the moral of this fable, is that when we're in a position of authority, we have to use prudence to govern those under us. We have to use prudence because we have to be able to focus on doing good things, and we can't allow bad people to take all of our attention so that we're constantly fighting against bad things. We've got to learn to control evil so that we can do good, and it takes prudence to do that. That's the moral of this fable. For example, with let's take the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. I could spend all of my time trying to catch students cheating, but I wouldn't actually get the goal of the program accomplished. And so I don't want to do that. So I've got to find ways to control the bad kids so that I don't waste time and fail to help the good kids. So that's always a challenge in government, at every different kind of government. We have to use prudence to not allow bad people to just take over everything. We have to be able to focus on doing good. Okay, so that's the fable of the envious man and the covetous man. You can also say that another fable is just how the evil destroy each other, right? They just constantly fight against each other, and how all sin hurts other people, and then those people turn around and try to hurt back, and it just goes on forever, right? So we've got this example of a sinful life and how sinful people just fight with each other and destroy each other forever. But we've also got a lesson about good government in this fable. Okay, so the first fable, the boar and the ass, we learned about impudence, right? Disrespectful behavior and how it provokes superiors to anger. And then we learned about controlling the passion of anger so that we don't cause ourselves to suffer loss because of the bad behavior of someone else. And we could say that this second fable is similar to it, because it teaches us how to govern the evil, to sort of let them destroy themselves so that the good people can continue to do good things. This is even how police often do things. You'll often notice that in certain areas, they're very bad. And there's lots of crime in certain areas. Sometimes the police don't even try to stop the crime in those areas. They just try to contain it and keep it in one place. And the people fighting basically punish each other. So that's one thing you'll see with how our government controls crime. They just try to control it and keep it in one place. So people can live outside of that area, usually in like a suburb. They can live in an area where there's less crime, and the crime can be controlled and kept in one place. It can't be stopped. So if you can't stop it, maybe you can just contain it. So it's a practical method for managing crime. All right. And then when, dopey people choose to get in their car and drive from the nice, safe suburb into town, and they end up getting injured or have crimes committed against them, it's sort of like, what are you doing in the midst of that trouble, right? It's better to, if you see evil coming, avoid it. Don't get into the middle of it and then act like something crazy happened. You should know better. So that's it. Those are our two fables there. That's all that I wanted to share today. So if you're eager to get out of here, you're welcome to go. If you have any questions about these fables, I'm willing to stay on for as long as questions continue to come in. If there's no questions about these fables, if there are other questions that you'd like to ask while we're on here together, feel free to do so. But that's all for today, okay? The fables of the boar and the ass, and the fable of the envious and the covetous man. I hope that was helpful.